Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the exploration ship Horizon, watching the massive alien station grow larger on the main screen. The station was bigger than any human city, with towers that stretched out like metal fingers reaching into space. Strange lights blinked across its surface in patterns that made no sense to human eyes. "First contact with an alien civilization," Morrison said quietly to himself, "and they invited us to their home." Dr. Lisa Grant walked up beside him, holding a tablet with translation software. She was Earth's best expert on alien languages, even though she had never met a real alien before today. Her hands shook slightly as she checked her notes for the 100th time. "The message was clear," she said. "The Galactic Council wants to meet with representatives from Earth. They said they welcome all new species into their family of worlds." "Commander." Ryan Blake, the military escort leader, crossed his arms and frowned. Something feels wrong about this. Why would they be so friendly to a species they just discovered? We've been in space for less than 200 years. These aliens have been traveling between stars for thousands. Morrison nodded. Maybe they're just naturally peaceful. The galaxy is a big place. There's room for everyone. The Horizon docked with the alien station with a soft thud. The airlock opened with a hiss, and the three humans stepped into a corridor filled with beings that looked like nothing from Earth. Some were tall and thin with too many arms. Others had shells like giant insects. A few glowed with their own light, floating instead of walking. An insect-like creature approached them. It was taller than any human, with 4 arms and eyes that reflected light like mirrors. When it spoke, the words came from a device around its neck. "Welcome, humans of Earth. I am Chancellor Krethek of the Vex High people. We have waited long to meet your species." Dr. Grant stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Thank you for inviting us, Chancellor. I am Dr. Lisa Grant, representing Earth's government. This is Captain Morrison and Commander Blake." Chancellor Krethek's head tilted in a way that might have been a nod. "Come, the Council waits to hear about your world and your people." They walked through corridors filled with aliens of every shape and size. The walls showed moving pictures of different worlds, some covered in crystal cities, others with oceans of liquid metal, and many with landscapes that human eyes could barely understand. 17 species make up our council," Chancellor Krethek explained as they walked. "Each has found peace and prosperity under our guidance. War is a thing of the past. Violence is no longer needed. All species learn to live in harmony." The main council chamber was enormous, with seats arranged in circles around a central platform. Aliens of different types sat in each section, all watching the humans with interest. Some whispered to each other in languages that sounded like music or static electricity. An alien made of pure light floated down from the ceiling. Its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I am Ambassador Velthara of the Luminary. We have studied your species from a distance, humans. You are ... interesting." Dr. Grant felt a chill at the way the alien said interesting. It did not sound like a compliment. Chancellor Krethek gestured for the humans to stand on the central platform. "Tell us about your world, Dr. Grant. Tell us about humanity." Grant cleared her throat and began. "Earth is a diverse world with many different peoples and cultures. We have had conflicts in our past, but we've learned to work together. We've explored our own solar system, and now we're ready to join the galactic community." The aliens listened quietly, but Grant noticed they kept looking at each other with expressions she couldn't read. When she finished, the chamber was silent for a long moment. Ambassador Velthara spoke first. "Your species has a history of violence, wars, conflicts, military technology. This is troubling. That's in our past," Grant said quickly. "We've moved beyond that. We want peace." Chancellor Krethek made a sound that might have been laughter. "All species say this when they first join us. But we have learned that aggressive tendencies do not simply disappear. They must be ... corrected. Commander Blake stepped forward. What do you mean by corrected? The chamber filled with the sound of alien voices murmuring. Chancellor Krethak raised one of his 4 arms for silence. Every species that joins our council undergoes the pacification process. It removes the ability to feel aggression, to desire conflict, to want violence. It is a gift we give to all. New members, you want to change our brains? Morrison asked, his voice sharp. We want to free you from the burden of violence, Ambassador Velthara replied. Violence is a disease that consumes species from within. We cure this disease. Grant felt sick. And if we refuse? The aliens around the chamber became very still. Chancellor Krethak's mirror-like eyes fixed on her. No species has ever refused. The benefits are too obvious. Peace, prosperity, an end to suffering. Show us what you mean, Blake demanded. Show us this pacification process. Chancellor Krethak nodded to another alien who activated a large screen. The image showed a group of beings that looked like lions with wings, but their eyes were empty and dull. They moved slowly, without energy or purpose, performing simple tasks in what looked like a factory. The Kurdoth were a warrior race, Chancellor Krethak explained. They fought constantly, even among themselves. Now they are at peace. They work happily in our industrial centers. They have no more anger, no more hate, no more desire for conflict. The humans stared at the screen in horror. The winged beings moved like robots with no spark of life in their eyes. They had been turned into living machines. This is what you want to do to humanity? Morrison asked. This is what we will do to humanity, Chancellor Krethak corrected. The only question is whether you submit willingly or require enforcement. Grant's mind raced. How many species have you done this to? All of them, Ambassador Velthara said simply. 17 species, hundreds of worlds, billions of beings. All now live in perfect peace. Blake's hand moved toward his weapon, but Morrison caught his arm. They were surrounded by thousands of aliens on a station in deep space. Fighting here would be suicide. We need time to consider this, Grant said carefully. Chancellor Krethak's head tilted again. Of course. We are not unreasonable. You have 1 galactic cycle, what you would call 6 months, to prepare your world for the process. Our pacification fleets will arrive then. And if we refuse? Morrison asked. The chamber became deadly quiet. When Chancellor Krethak spoke again, his voice was cold. Then we will demonstrate why no species has ever refused. Your military will be destroyed, your cities bombarded, your population reduced to a manageable size. The survivors will be processed. Your children will be raised in our schools, taught proper behavior. He paused, and Morrison could hear the aliens' breathing apparatus working. But perhaps some of your young could serve as workers, like the Kurdoth. It would be a mercy, compared to complete extinction. The words hit Morrison like a physical blow. They were talking about enslaving human children. The captain stood slowly, his face calm but his eyes burning. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but every alien in the chamber could hear him clearly. You just made the worst mistake in galactic history. The humans turned and walked out of the chamber in silence. Behind them, the aliens murmured among themselves, some sounding amused by the humans' words. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. As the horizon undocked from the station and began its journey back to Earth, Morrison stood on the bridge looking out at the stars. Beside him, Blake was already planning defensive strategies while Grant worked on her report to Earth's government. None of them spoke about what they had seen, but they all knew the same thing. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you threatened the children of a species that had never learned how to surrender. The peaceful age of the Galactic Council was about to end, and it would end in fire. The emergency meeting room beneath. The White House was filled with the most powerful people on Earth. President Elena Torres sat at the head of the long table, her face grim as she listened to Dr. Grant's report. Around the table sat generals, scientists, and world leaders who had flown in from every continent. "They want to turn us into zombies," General Adam Phillips said, his fist clenched on the table. "Remove our ability to fight, to defend ourselves, to even feel angry when someone threatens our families." Dr. Grant nodded sadly. "The process seems to remove all aggressive emotions. The beings we saw had no spark left in them. They were alive but not really living." President Torres leaned back in her chair. "And they gave us 6 months before their fleets arrive?" "That's correct, Madam President," Captain Morrison replied. Chancellor Krathek seemed very confident that we would either submit or be easily defeated. General Phillips laughed, but there was no humor in it. 50,000 ships, they said. "And they've never lost a war?" Commander Blake spoke up from his seat. "I managed to access some of their computer systems during our visit. My cyber specialist Kelly Davis was able to copy their historical records without them knowing." A young woman with short black hair stepped forward. Kelly Davis looked nervous, but determined. "The aliens follow the same pattern every time," she said, activating a holographic display. "They find a new species, demand surrender, then send a small fleet to demonstrate their power. Most species give up after seeing 1 or 2 cities destroyed." The display showed battle records from dozens of worlds. Each conflict followed the same script. Alien fleets would arrive, destroy a few military targets, and the native species would surrender within days or weeks. "They've never fought a real war," General Phillips said slowly. "They've never faced an enemy that fought back with everything they had." Dr. Nathan Price, Earth's leading weapons scientist, cleared his throat. "I've been studying the technology samples we managed to collect. Their weapons are powerful, but they're designed for quick victories against frightened enemies. They're not built for long campaigns against determined resistance." President Torres looked around the room. "What are our chances in a direct fight? Against 50,000 ships?" "0, General Phillips admitted. "But that's only if we fight the kind of war they expect us to fight." Colonel Brian Turner, head of Advanced Weapons Development, stood up. "We've been working on new technologies based on what we learned from their systems. But our real advantage isn't technology. It's that we know how to fight wars that last years, not days." The president turned to Dr. Grant. "In your opinion, is there any chance of negotiating with them?" Grant shook her head. "They see negotiation as weakness. In their minds, they're doing us a favor by removing our violent nature. They truly believe they're helping us by destroying everything that makes us human." Kelly Davis brought up another display. "I also found records of species that tried to hide or run. The Council hunted them down across the galaxy. There's nowhere to go that they won't eventually find us." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Finally, President Torres spoke. "Then we fight. We make them pay such a high price for trying to enslave us that they'll regret ever finding Earth." General Phillips smiled grimly. "We'll need to change everything about how we approach warfare. No more rules of engagement designed for civilized opponents. No more trying to minimize casualties or protect infrastructure. This is survival." Dr. Price activated his own presentation. "We have advantages they don't expect. Our nuclear technology is considered primitive by their standards, but it's also unpredictable. They've forgotten how dangerous primitive weapons can be when used creatively." Colonel Turner nodded. "We're also developing biological weapons targeted at their specific alien physiologies. Dr. Susan White's team has made some promising breakthroughs." "Chemical weapons too," added General Phillips. "The Council considers those barbaric and beneath civilized species. They won't be prepared for gas attacks or poison." President Torres looked troubled. "We're talking about using weapons that we banned among ourselves." "Ma'am," Commander Blake said quietly. "They're planning to lobotomize our entire species. I think the rules have changed." Captain Morrison stood up. "There's something else. During our visit, I noticed their ships aren't designed for the kind of fighting we're planning. They expect enemies to line up and trade shots at long range. They're not ready for ships that ram them or explode on purpose." Kelly Davis pulled up technical specifications. "Their shields are strong against energy weapons, but weaker against physical impacts. A ship moving fast enough could punch right through their defenses. Suicide attacks," General Phillips mused, "turn every ship into a missile." Dr. Grant looked horrified. "We're talking about asking our people to die. We're talking about asking them to die fighting instead of living as slaves," Morrison corrected. "Every human I know would choose that. President Torres made her decision. We prepare for total war. Every resource, every person, every weapon we have. If they want to destroy humanity, they'll have to do it over our dead bodies." The meeting broke up into smaller groups, each focusing on different aspects of the coming war. General Phillips took charge of military planning, while Dr. Price coordinated with scientists around the world to develop new weapons. 3 months later, the outer monitoring stations detected the first alien ships entering the solar system. The Council had sent what they called the 47th Pacification Fleet, 200 ships under the command of Admiral Zethkar, a Vex High commander who had successfully conquered 12 other species. Captain Morrison was aboard the stealth ship Valkyrie, watching the alien fleet from a safe distance. The enemy ships were beautiful in their own way, with smooth curves and glowing sections that pulsed like heartbeats. They moved in perfect formation, confident and unhurried. "They're not even trying to hide," Morrison's navigator, Lieutenant Carl Brooks, observed. "No scouts, no advance reconnaissance. They just flew straight into our system like they own it." Morrison studied the alien formation through his binoculars. Why would they hide? In their experience, the war is already over. We just don't know it yet. The alien fleet took position near Mars, sending a broadcast toward Earth. Admiral Zethkar's image appeared on screens around the world, translated into every human language. "People of Earth," the insectoid alien said, his 4 arms spread wide. "I am Admiral Zethkar of the Galactic Council. We have come to bring you peace. Surrender now, and the pacification process will be quick and painless. Resist, and we will demonstrate why no species defies the Council." President Torres broadcast humanity's response from the ruins of an old battlefield, chosen specifically for its symbolism. Behind her, the flags of every nation on Earth flew side by side. "Admiral Zethkar," she said, looking directly into the camera, "you offer us slavery and call it peace. You threaten our children and call it mercy. Humanity's answer is simple: come and take it." The broadcast ended, and within minutes the alien fleet began moving toward Mars. Human colonies on the red planet had been evacuated months ago, but they weren't empty. Colonel Marcus Stone and 5,000 volunteers had stayed behind, turning every building into a fortress and every street into a killing ground. Admiral Zethkar expected the Mars colonies to surrender after a few demonstration strikes. Instead, the human defenders opened fire with everything they had. Ancient nuclear missiles launched from hidden silos, while suicide ships piloted by volunteers rammed into alien vessels. The Battle of Mars had begun, and the galaxy was about to learn what humans meant when they said they would never surrender. The aliens expected a quick victory against a frightened enemy. Instead, they found themselves fighting creatures that became more dangerous when cornered. Not less. In the depths of space, Captain Morrison watched the first explosions bloom around Mars like deadly flowers. He keyed his radio to the emergency frequency that would carry his words to every human ship, station, and bunker in the solar system. "This is Morrison to all human forces. The aliens think they're fighting another pacification campaign. Show them what a real war looks like. The first alien landing craft touched down on Mars in what used to be New Phoenix Colony. Admiral Zethkar watched from his command ship as his troops prepared to secure the settlement. According to his intelligence, the colony housed 50,000 humans who would surrender once they saw the hopelessness of resistance. The landing craft opened, and 200 Vex-High soldiers marched out in perfect formation. Their armor gleamed in the Martian sunlight, and their weapons hummed with energy that could cut through steel. They had conquered 12 worlds using these same tactics. The colony appeared empty. Buildings stood silent under the rust-colored sky with no signs of life anywhere. The Vex-High commander, Captain Velkoth, ordered his troops to advance toward the main administrative center. They made it halfway across the central plaza before the ground exploded beneath them. Colonel Marcus Stone had spent 3 months turning Mars into a death trap. Every street was mined, every building was rigged with explosives, and every piece of cover concealed human defenders who had volunteered to die fighting rather than live as slaves. The explosion killed 30 Vex-High soldiers instantly. As the survivors tried to regroup, windows shattered around the plaza, and human fighters opened fire with weapons the aliens had never encountered. Chemical bullets that ate through alien armor, explosive rounds that spread acid, and gas grenades that released toxins designed specifically for Vex-High biology. Captain Velkoth screamed orders, but his troops were dying too fast to obey. These humans didn't fight like any enemy he had faced. They didn't retreat when his soldiers returned fire. Instead, they charged forward, some of them already wounded, using grenades to blow themselves up along with nearby aliens. Lieutenant Amy Carter led a squad of 12 humans through the underground tunnels that Stone's engineers had dug beneath the colony. They moved like ghosts through passages the aliens didn't know existed, appearing behind enemy lines to strike and disappear again. Carter's mission was simple, but horrifying. Capture alien weapons and equipment by any means necessary. When her squad cornered a group of Vex-High soldiers in a storage building, she ordered her people to hide among the human corpses scattered around the colony. The aliens found what looked like a room full of dead humans and lowered their guard. That was when Carter and her squad activated the grenades they had strapped to their own bodies. The explosion killed everyone in the room, aliens and humans alike, but it gave other human forces access to the advanced weapons they desperately needed. Back in space, Admiral Zethkar watched his casualty reports with growing alarm. He had lost 60 ships in the first day of fighting, not to superior alien technology, but to human vessels that rammed his fleet while detonating their nuclear reactors. Captain Tony Mitchell had piloted the destroyer Phoenix directly into the alien dreadnought Cosmic Harmony. As his ship's hull cracked under alien fire, Mitchell activated every nuclear weapon on board and crashed into the enemy vessel. The explosion was visible from Earth, a second sun blooming in the darkness of space. The alien admiral had never seen anything like it. Every species the Council had conquered fought to preserve their own lives. These humans threw their lives away like weapons, and each death made them more dangerous, not less. They fight like demons, reported Captain Velkoth from the surface of Mars. They use their own dead as shields. They poison the air we breathe. They turn their bodies into bombs. Admiral Zethkar tried to maintain his composure, but fear was creeping into his voice. Continue the advance. They cannot sustain these losses forever. On Mars, Colonel Stone proved the Admiral wrong. The human defenders had prepared for exactly this kind of thinking. When the aliens captured the colony's hospital, they found it filled with human casualties who seemed too wounded to fight. The Vex-High medics tried to treat them, following Council protocols for dealing with enemy wounded. That was when they discovered the humans had surgically implanted explosives in their own bodies. Dr. Susan White had developed the technique, allowing wounded fighters to become living bombs that could take out entire enemy squads. The hospital exploded, killing everyone inside. But the psychological effect on the surviving aliens was devastating. The HFY soldiers began reporting to their commanders that they were fighting an enemy that had no concept of surrender, no fear of death, and no limit to the brutality they would inflict on themselves to hurt their enemies. Meanwhile, Admiral Patricia Wells commanded the human fleet from the bridge of the battleship Defiance. Her ships were older and less advanced than the alien vessels, but they fought with a desperation that the Council forces couldn't match. When the alien cruiser Star of Peace tried to bombard human positions on Mars, Captain Roger Hayes piloted his frigate Fury directly into the alien ship's engines. The collision destroyed both vessels, but it also showed the aliens that humans would sacrifice anything to protect their people. "They're not fighting a war," Admiral Wells told her surviving captains over the radio. "They're fighting for their right to exist as human beings. That's worth more than any technology." Dr. White's biological weapons began taking effect across the alien fleet. The toxins she had developed were spreading through the HFY ships' air systems, causing illness and panic among crews that had never faced biological warfare. The Council had banned such weapons centuries ago, considering them too barbaric for civilized warfare, but humans had never agreed to follow the Council's rules. Lieutenant Colonel Gary Foster led a team of human commandos who had captured an alien transport ship. They used it to infiltrate the enemy fleet, posing as Council reinforcements. Once aboard Admiral Zethkar's command ship, they released Dr. White's latest creation, a virus that attacked the HFY nervous system, causing paralysis and death within hours. The virus spread through the ship before the aliens realized what was happening. Foster and his team died when the HFY finally stopped them, but not before they had infected dozens of enemy vessels. Admiral Zethkar found himself commanding a fleet that was literally dying around him. His soldiers reported seeing things that violated every assumption the Council had about warfare. Humans who fought from inside the wreckage of their own destroyed vehicles. Humans who used their children's toys as improvised weapons. Humans who sang as they died, as long as they could take aliens with them. The breaking point came when Colonel Stone's final gambit. Activated on Mars, the human defenders had rigged the planet's main fusion reactor to overload. As alien forces finally reached the reactor facility, Stone transmitted a message to the enemy fleet. "You wanted to see what humans do when you threaten our families." His voice crackled over the radio. "This is what we do." The reactor exploded with the force of a small star, turning half the Martian colony into a crater of molten glass. Thousands of humans died in the explosion, but they took even more aliens with them. The blast was so powerful that it damaged ships in orbit and sent a shock wave through the alien fleet. Admiral Zethkar stared at the glowing crater where New Phoenix Colony used to be. These humans had destroyed their own world rather than let it fall into alien hands. They had turned their home into a weapon and used it to kill their enemies. His final report to the Galactic Council was brief and filled with terror. Request: immediate reinforcements. Human casualties 60%. Our casualties 75%. The enemy does not fight according to any known principles of warfare. They have weaponized their own extinction instinct. Recommend complete nuclear bombardment of Earth before they develop more advanced versions of these tactics. The transmission ended with the sound of explosions as human ships continued their suicidal attacks on what remained of the 47th Pacification Fleet. For the first time in 3,000 years, a Galactic Council military operation had not just failed but been completely destroyed by the species it was meant to conquer. And Earth was still untouched, its people still free, still preparing for the next alien fleet that would surely come. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity was unlike any species they had ever encountered. These creatures didn't just fight wars, They became war itself, turning every breath and heartbeat into weapons against their enemies. The news of the Mars defeat spread through Council space like wildfire. On 17 different worlds, alien citizens who had lived in peace for generations suddenly faced a terrifying truth. The Galactic Council could be beaten. Supreme Admiral Kolfesh of the Luminari received the emergency summons while reviewing peaceful trade routes near the galaxy's core. He was the Council's most experienced military commander, having overseen the integration of 6 species over his long career. None of those campaigns had lasted more than 3 days. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in their 3,000-year history. Chancellor Krethak's image flickered with static as he spoke from his home world, which was suffering from mysterious illnesses that had started appearing after the human diplomatic visit. The humans must be destroyed completely, the Chancellor declared. They are a virus that will spread chaos throughout the galaxy if we do not act decisively. Ambassador Velthara's light form pulsed with agitation. Admiral Zethkar's report described warfare beyond our understanding. They used their own bodies as weapons. They poisoned entire ships. They destroyed their own colonies rather than surrender them. Supreme Admiral Kolfesh studied the battle reports with growing concern. These tactics violate every principle of civilized warfare. No species fights like this. That is precisely why they are so dangerous, said Councillor Thexmal of the crystal-based Silthara. They do not think like civilized beings. They think like predators. The Council made their decision. The 12th Extermination Armada would depart immediately for human space. 800 ships, armed with planet-cracking weapons, under the command of their best admiral. There would be no attempt at pacification this time. Humanity would be wiped out completely. But while the Council planned their massive assault, humans were already striking back in ways the aliens had never imagined. Captain Jake Morrison had survived the destruction of his ship during the Mars battle, rescued by a human medical vessel that had hidden in the asteroid belt. Now he commanded a small fleet of captured alien ships, crewed by humans who had learned to operate Council technology through necessity and desperation. Morrison's raiders had spent the past month infiltrating Council space, hitting targets the aliens thought were completely safe. Supply depots, civilian transports, and even cultural sites that the aliens considered sacred. Commander Rachel Stone, sister of the fallen Colonel Marcus Stone, led the most daring raid yet. Her team used a captured Vex-High transport to approach Zentara Prime, the Council's capital world. Posing as refugees fleeing the human conflict, the aliens welcomed them with typical Council generosity, offering medical care and temporary housing. That night, while the capital slept, Rachel's team released Dr. Susan White's latest biological weapon into the city's water supply. The toxin was designed to work slowly, causing gradual illness rather than immediate death. By the time the aliens realized what was happening, millions of Council citizens were affected. The psychological impact was devastating. For the first time in millennia, aliens on the Council's most protected world were dying because of enemy action. Lieutenant Colonel Gary Foster, meanwhile, had taken a different approach. His commandos were systematically destroying the Council's industrial infrastructure, targeting the shipyards and factories that produced their advanced technology. The attack on the Rigel shipyards was Foster's masterpiece. His team infiltrated the facility by hiding inside shipping containers filled with raw materials. Once inside, they didn't just sabotage the equipment, they reprogrammed the automated systems to produce defective ships that would fail catastrophically when used in combat. Dozens of new Council vessels left the shipyards looking perfect, but carrying fatal flaws in their hull plating, weapon systems, and life support. The aliens wouldn't discover the sabotage until the ships broke apart during their first battles. Dr. White, working from hidden laboratories on Earth, had developed new horrors specifically for the coming invasion. Her latest creation was a nanobiological weapon that could survive in space spreading from ship to ship through normal contact. Any alien who touched a contaminated surface would become a carrier, spreading the infection throughout their vessel. But the most terrifying human innovation was psychological warfare on a scale the Council had never imagined. President Torres authorized the Total War Protocol, targeting not just military assets, but the civilian population's will to fight. Human raiders began broadcasting messages into Council space, describing in detail what would happen to alien civilians when human forces reached their worlds. The broadcasts included footage from the Mars battle, showing humans fighting to the death with weapons made from their own body parts. The effect on alien morale was catastrophic. Species that had lived in peace for generations suddenly faced the possibility of facing an enemy that would never stop, never surrender, and never show mercy. Panic spread through Council space as civilians demanded their governments negotiate with the humans. Several Outer Rim worlds declared neutrality in the conflict, refusing to support the Council's war effort. The unity that had held the galactic government together for 3 millennia began to crack under the pressure of human brutality when the 12th Extermination Armada finally reached Earth's solar system. They found a planet that had been completely transformed for war. Every city was fortified, every mountain was hollowed out for military bases, and every human was armed and ready to die fighting. Supreme Admiral Kolfesh looked down at Earth from his flagship and saw a world that glowed with the heat of massive industrial activity. The humans had turned their entire planet into a weapons factory, producing arms and equipment at a rate that seemed impossible for such a primitive species. General Adam Phillips, now commanding Earth's planetary defense, had prepared for this moment for months. The alien fleet was massive, but it was also exactly what human strategists had expected. The Council fought wars the same way they had for thousands of years, using overwhelming force against enemies who would surrender when faced with certain defeat. But humans had never learned how to surrender. The first phase of the Battle of Earth was unlike anything in galactic history. Instead of trying to defend orbital space, human ships launched suicidal attacks against the alien fleet while ground-based. Weapons fired everything they had at the incoming invasion force. Captain Morrison, now commanding the human ship Vengeance, led the charge. His vessel had been rebuilt using alien technology and human desperation, creating a hybrid ship that sacrificed everything for maximum destructive power. "All ships, this is Morrison," he broadcast to the human fleet. "Remember what they wanted to do to our children. Make them pay for every meter of space." The Vengeance smashed into Supreme Admiral Kolfesh's flagship while detonating its nuclear arsenal. The explosion was so massive it created a temporary star in Earth's orbit, visible from the planet's surface as a new sun burning in the sky. But even as human ships died by the hundreds, they were taking alien vessels with them at a rate that terrified the Council forces. Every human death created a gap in the alien formation that other human ships exploited with ruthless efficiency. On Earth's surface, General Phillips watched the battle through orbital sensors while preparing for the inevitable alien landing. The planet's entire population had been mobilized for war, with children as young as 12 trained to use weapons and explosives. The aliens who managed to reach Earth's surface found a world where every building was a fortress, every street was a killing ground, and every human was willing to die rather than surrender. The Council forces had advanced technology, but they had never faced an entire planet whose population treated warfare as a religious duty. Dr. White's biological weapons were everywhere, turning the very air that aliens breathed into a toxic environment. Chemical weapons banned by every civilized species filled the atmosphere around human cities, making it impossible for alien troops to operate without protective gear that slowed them down and limited their effectiveness. The battle raged for 6 months, with alien forces slowly grinding through human defenses while paying a price in blood that shocked the galaxy. Supreme Admiral Kolfesh reports back to the Council described humans as a species that had turned warfare into an art form. "They do not fight to win," he transmitted before his flagship was destroyed. "They fight to make us lose. Every human death costs us 3 aliens. At this rate, they will destroy the Council before we destroy them." The galaxy was learning that. Some species were too dangerous to conquer, too vicious to pacify, and too determined to ever accept defeat. The war ended not with humanity's surrender, but with a message that shook the foundations of galactic civilization. It came from the Emergency Council session on Zentara Prime, BROADCASD, across all alien territories on the same frequency humans had used to spread terror throughout Council space. Chancellor Krithaka's image was barely recognizable. The once proud Vex High leader looked broken, his forearms trembling as he spoke. Behind him, the Council chamber was nearly empty. Half the member species had already withdrawn their support for the war. "To the humans of Earth," he began, his translator struggling with words no Council leader had ever spoken before. "The Galactic Council formally requests cessation of hostilities. We are prepared to negotiate terms for your independence." President Elena Torres received the transmission in her command bunker 3 miles beneath the ruins of Washington, D.C. Around her, the surviving leaders of Earth's government looked exhausted but unbroken. The planet's surface was scarred and burning, but the human population had never wavered in their determination to remain free. The negotiations took place on a neutral space station in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. The station had been built by human engineers using salvaged alien technology, a symbol of how humanity had adapted and evolved during the brutal conflict. Dr. Lisa Grant, now scarred by years of war but still serving as humanity's chief diplomat, sat across from the alien delegation. The Council representatives looked like refugees from their own civilization. The unity that had held their government together for 3 millennia had shattered under the pressure of human resistance. "The terms are simple," Grant said, reading from a document written in both human and alien languages. "Complete recognition of human sovereignty over Earth and all territories claimed by humanity, reparations for war damages, and a permanent exclusion zone around human space that no Council ship may enter without permission." Ambassador Veltharis. Light form flickered weakly. "These terms are generous, considering your victory." Grant's expression remained cold. "Our victory? Ambassador, look around you. Earth is in ruins. Half our population is dead. Our cities are radioactive craters. This isn't victory, this is survival." She leaned forward, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's rage. "We never wanted this war. We offered friendship, and you answered with threats of slavery. We offered peace, and you brought fleets to destroy us. You have learned what happens when you corner a species that refuses to surrender." Chancellor Kraythak tried to speak, but Grant wasn't finished. "Let this be a lesson that lasts forever. Humanity asked for nothing but the right to exist as free beings. You could have had us as allies, as friends, as partners in building something better. Instead, you chose to make us your enemies. The galaxy will remember the cost of that choice." The formal surrender was signed 6 hours later. The Galactic Council agreed to withdraw all forces from human space immediately and to pay reparations that would fund Earth's reconstruction for the next century. In return, humanity agreed to cease all offensive operations against Council territory, but the real terms of the peace treaty were written in blood and fear across the galaxy. Entire species had been traumatized by their encounters with human warfare. The Vex High developed cultural taboos against even mentioning humanity, while the Luminari began teaching their children that humans were the nightmare at the edge of space. Admiral Patricia Wells, now commanding the renamed Terran Defense Force, established monitoring stations throughout human space. The message was clear. Humanity remained ready for war, And the galaxy had learned that some species were too dangerous to threaten. The aftermath of the war revealed the true extent of human innovation born from desperation. Dr. Nathan Price's research teams had reverse-engineered alien technology and improved upon it, creating weapon systems that surpassed anything the Council had developed in centuries of peaceful stagnation. Dr. Susan White's biological warfare research had produced strains of diseases that could target specific alien species while leaving humans unharmed. The knowledge of how to create such weapons was carefully preserved in hidden laboratories around Earth, a reminder to any future enemies of what humanity was capable of producing when threatened. Captain Jake Morrison, promoted to admiral after his heroic actions during the war, oversaw the creation of the memorial fleets. These were human vessels that patrolled the borders of Council space, their very presence a constant reminder of what happened when the galaxy pushed humanity too far. The ships were crewed by veterans of the war, men and women who had lost everything fighting for humanity's freedom. They carried no weapons beyond what was needed for self-defense, but their message was clear. Humans were watching, always watching, ready to respond to any sign of renewed aggression. The psychological impact on galactic civilization was profound. For 3,000 years, the Council had maintained peace through the threat of overwhelming force. No species had ever successfully resisted their will, and the idea that primitive worlds could defeat advanced alien technology had been unthinkable. Now, every species in the galaxy knew that resistance was possible. If humans could defeat the Council, what did that mean for the stability of galactic government? The carefully maintained order that had kept peace for millennia began to crack as member worlds questioned the Council's authority and competence. Trade routes that had operated safely for centuries were abandoned as merchants feared encountering human raiders. Entire sectors of space were avoided by alien vessels, not because humans controlled them, but because the memory of human brutality made them too terrifying to approach. 20 years after the war's end, Council space had shrunk by nearly half. Member species had withdrawn to their core worlds, maintaining only minimal contact with their former allies. The golden age of galactic unity was over, shattered by humanity's refusal to accept slavery. 50 years later, Dr. Grant found herself teaching at the rebuilt Terran Academy, sharing the lessons of the war with new generations of human diplomats and soldiers. Her students listened in fascination as she described the galaxy before the war, when aliens believed that overwhelming force could solve any problem. The Council made a fundamental error, she told her class. They assumed that all intelligent species would choose slavery over death. They had never encountered a people who believed that freedom was worth any price, including extinction. She walked to the window of her classroom, looking out at the memorial park where the names of humanity's war dead were carved in black stone. Millions of names representing the price of freedom. We taught the galaxy a lesson that day, she continued. Some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight seems hopeless. Some principles are more important than life itself. And some species will burn the universe down rather than accept defeat. Her students took notes, but Grant knew that the real lesson was already written in the stars themselves. Human ships continued their patrols, human scientists continued their research, and human soldiers continued their training. The war was over, but the vigilance never ended. In the depths of space, alien children still learned stories about the Terran War as cautionary tales. They were told about the species that fought so viciously that even their enemies, grandchildren, would wake up screaming from nightmares about human brutality. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest weapon was never their technology or their tactics. It was their absolute refusal to surrender, their willingness to drag their enemies into hell rather than submit to slavery, and their ability to find victory even in mutual destruction. As Grant finished her lecture and dismissed her students, She spoke the words that had become humanity's unofficial motto, carved above the entrance to every military base and government building on Earth. Never again will humanity kneel. Never again will we accept chains. And if the galaxy forgets this lesson, we will teach it again, as many times as necessary, until the stars themselves remember why they should have left us alone. The universe was vast and filled with wonders, but in the darkness between the stars, something new had been born. Humanity had claimed its place not through conquest or diplomacy, but through this simple demonstration that some species were too stubborn to die and too dangerous to enslave. The galaxy still trembled, and in the silence of space, that trembling sounded very much like respect.